Are you somebody that's constantly wondering what it means to be a man? Or maybe you need some tactical advice on how you can redefine what it means to be a man, because the current definition that society has given you is it just doesn't feel right inside. Well, you were in luck, because in today's episode, we're going to talk about what it means to be a man and how you can actually redefine that within yourself. It's actually a podcast episode, so the quality of the video isn't amazing. Please forgive me for that, but the content is so good. But before we jump in, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so that you get weekly notifications to when I release new videos. I'm going to be putting out a whole bunch of content to do with mindset, personal development, just anything that's going to make you a better human being in general. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell. Now let's jump into the episode. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Millennial Business Podcast. I am so excited today to be joined by my amazing friend, Dane Robinson, who I met here in Bali playing touch football at Finn's Rec Club, sorry. Dane, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so very much for having me, Taylor. It's awesome to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited because I know a little bit about your story, but I don't know a lot. And obviously I see some things on social media and I'm very intrigued and I'm excited to learn more. So as a young man making the decision when you were 14, not that you didn't want to drink, and then when you turned 18, that societal peer pressure, I know that pressure. I've felt that pressure because in Australia, it is a huge problem where if you don't drink, it's like you're an alien. It's seriously insane. Like if you don't, it's just, and especially growing up in Canberra, there's literally nothing really to do once you turn 18 besides drink on the weekends and go out and get really drunk. For somebody who did have to feel the need to give into that pressure, and then I guess like looking back at yourself now, do you think there's anything that you could possibly say to yourself that would make you not give into that pressure, or do you think you really just had to learn that lesson?
I had to learn that lesson, and looking back, there's a common thing of, people look back on their lives with the beauty of hindsight and they feel regret at some of the decisions that they made. But I wouldn't be this person that I am now if I hadn't had the experience. Right now, the type of person that I am is, someone who feels empowered by the decision not to drink now because I've experienced. And because I've gone down the pathway that I have, I'm now able to influence people who, not directly influence them and tell them, bro, you need to stop drinking, you're a dick. But just in order to live a different life. And by living a life, and this is one thing that I've learned that is key over the last 2 years, is when you live a life a certain way, a certain set of rules, and which is against the societal norm, but you are non-judgmental in your approach and you are non-direct with your influence, then people naturally gravitate towards that. And I'll give you an example. I'm also vegetarian, I've been vegetarian for about 4.5 years. Some of the conversations especially after a rugby game, there's after match and people get on the piss and drink and then they eat heaps of barbecue and stuff. But I know that I was sitting there and some of the boys, some of the younger boys know that I'm vegetarian and don't drink and all that. But all it takes is just that first question of someone to ask you what it means and then to really kind of develop their own understanding. So one kid, he said, Dane, what do you eat? What do you eat after rugby? And I said, and I look at him with my plate of potato, rice and bread, because that's all there is at an after match. And I said to him, look, I eat this, and this helps me do this and that. But that one question from that young kid will help his brain develop a sense of beliefs and, that curiosity for him to go, okay, well, what is it now? What is it now? And he'll just keep asking questions. And if you're non-judgmental in your approach and you're non-obtrusive with your direct, influence, then you open yourself up to be able to influence people on such a greater level because they're empowered in making the decision that they want to make. It's not you telling them that they need to make it because that disempowers the person. You need to influence them in a way that they don't know they're being influenced, but it'll allow them to make the decision. So, tailoring it back to the original question, did I have to go through those examples? Yeah, I did, because even in my drinking stance now, it's exactly the same format. I sit there and I've impacted people's lives just by not drinking. They've gone, I don't go out as much anymore. It's like, cool, awesome, man. That's real cool. But
Yeah.
you just don't know the impact of what you do until you start to see people actually doing it. You're like, oh, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think in situations like this, and I've had a similar experience in terms of leaving Canberra and moving away and doing something different. But if you take the action, like you can tell someone 1,000 times to do something, but when you tell them, they don't listen. But if you lead by example, if you do something first, then you're planting the seed in their mind that they could potentially do that as well. And it's crazy the amount of messages that I get on Instagram of people, like literally one of my friends was messaging me yesterday. He's a 27-year-old, like fully grown man, has his own business, whatever. And he was like, fuck, I want to move to Bali so badly, but I am terrified. He was like, I'm so scared. I don't know how you did it. And I was like, well, like, what's the worst? Like, when you think about it, okay, you want to move to Bali, right? You move. The worst that could happen is you don't like it, and then you move home.
You move back.
Like, that's literally, and I said that to him. I was like, you have so much money, like, you could literally move and just, you can afford to move back straight away. When I moved here, I couldn't afford to buy a plane ticket home. So there was no coming home for me. But for him, he has heaps of money. So I'm like, I don't know. It's like it just blows my mind how people let fear hold them back so much. Like he said, it's his dream to move to Bali, but he's too terrified. And I was just like so mind blown. But when people know somebody that leads by example and does the thing before them, it helps to give them the bravery, and it's almost like they're borrowing confidence from you, because like if she can do it, then so can I. But if they don't know anyone that has done that beforehand, then they're like, oh no, it sort of seems impossible. But you make it possible for them in their own mind.
Totally. And the other thing, like, so people, what I've come to realize over the last couple of years is that people have a lot of issues, a lot of belief issues within themselves that they just don't even realize. You know, take for example that guy. You know, he sees your life and sees it as impossible, and he goes, you know what? Oh, I can never do that. Reality, he can, but there's something within himself that's preventing it. It is fear. But what is that fear? You know, is that fear the fact that that it comes as a result of maybe his parents who, you know, took a risk once and then lost, you know, a handful of stuff, and then it got programmed into him that, you know, he should never take risks? Or, you know, has he been burned in the past by a girlfriend who just took all his money and left him dry? Or does he have something to do with Bali? You know, who knows? But there's so much within people we just don't know or understand that prevents us. And it's only when we like fully embrace that and learn about ourselves that we can fully, you know, step into that and beyond that.
Totally. Well, people have so many limiting beliefs, but they don't even know. Like before I started working in the personal development world and consuming content from the personal development world, I didn't know what a limiting belief was. That's not something that anyone had ever spoken to me about. And then really when I moved to Bali, I started really deep diving into all of my limiting beliefs and the old traumas and triggers and things that were holding me back. And when you actually face those things head on and like figure out what they are and then try and figure out how you can move through them, it's like, first of all, it's super confronting. Like when I first sat down and I was like, okay, I'm going to write down every single possible limiting belief or old story or trigger that I think that I have. I wrote 3 pages. I know, and I was like, holy shit, I thought I was like a confident, cool sort of, and I had 3 pages of them, and I was so overwhelmed to begin with. But then when I had actually identified them, I felt really empowered, because it was almost like I took back my power, because when you realize what they are, you have the power to change them.
Totally.
Right. And that's
once you bring them out into the open, you can work on them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's so important, especially like you mentioned, people drinking, I guess, like as an escape from maybe their trauma or what they really truly are thinking. And that's sort of what you and your wife were doing, is you were drinking maybe to escape things or not look at certain areas of your life. But then when you sobered up, it forced you to really look at everything for that first sort of year. And is there anything that really helped you with, like, when you are being confronted with those sorts of feelings and realizing what your demons are? Is there anything in particular that sort of helped you to deal with them? Because I know for so many people, it can be really, really scary.
Totally. Yep. There's a couple of things that just come to mind, a sense. And number one, was a quote which came about as you mentioned half of that sentence, but it was, talking about, how we use alcoholism and drugs to escape, our whatever our situations are. And I remember this quote from, I can't remember who it is. I think it might have been Russell Brand. It was, marijuana isn't the gateway drug. It's trauma. Trauma is the gateway drug. When you go far enough back into a person's history, and those who are, severely addicted to certain types of substances, it's not marijuana that got them there. It's not alcohol that got them there. It's trauma. Trauma in one way, shape, or form has helped shape that person's direction into where it is and where you see that person now. So that was the first thing that came about. But to answer the question, what were the things that helped us get through that first year? To be honest, and this journey that we did over the first year and that we've continued to do has been much easier because we are together. Both her and I are in the same boat. And what I've seen and what I've felt is that a lot of couples, when one person realizes they have an issue, a drinking or a drug issue, is that the other person will just let them work on it themselves because they don't see it as their problem. But in reality, what is needed is the true unconditional and together support of someone else, that is close to them, whether it be, their friend, their family, their spouse, their husband, their wife, whatever it is. But us getting through that first year, I don't think we could have done it if we weren't together in that sense, because you hear a lot of the stats about how people try and give up, and it takes someone 7 goes in order to give up an addiction. But, the strength of two people together is much stronger than, two individuals.
Yeah.
And so being able to get through that as a couple, saying in that moment, let's give up together, that was the empowerment that we both needed in order for us to get through. And I think that I can credit that to a lot of what we experienced, as well as, certain minimal techniques like, having a drink in your hand whenever you go somewhere, whether it's water, sparkling water, or, a Coca-Cola or something, certain things like that. Staying antisocial for a period of time because everything triggers you. We turned up to parties and you could tell that guys were high, and we would just be like, oh, fuck, we've got to get out of here, because this is just too triggering for us. Oh, shit, people are drunk. Oh, that's too triggering for us.
Yeah.
So removing ourselves from the situation, but doing it with love. And then also really choosing who our friends were. A lot of our friends that we created were party friends, friends that we go out with and, hey, what's up, girl? Hey, what? Like, yeah, cool, all right. That's fun for like going out. But then when you really want to truly deep connection with someone, you don't go knock on their door. You go knock on the door of someone that you're really close to. And so we found a process, and still finding a process, of really kind of just cutting away the people in our lives that don't bring us any value and replacing it with people that we can trust, that we support, that support us and do bring us, a heck of a lot of value.
Yeah, totally. And I guess one way that I would assume that you could maybe start to do this is if, for example, you do decide that you want to give up drinking, you could say to all of your friends, like, message them personally, not say it like in a group or something, and say, hey, I actually really want to give up drinking. It's become a really big problem for me, and I would love your support, and I would love for you to help me to try and give it up and not encourage me to do it more often. And if people then continue to peer pressure you, then they're obviously not going to be the friends that are going to support you through that. But if you have friends that are willing to, like, if you all go out for dinner or something, they say, hey, no, don't get a drink when you just ordered a beer or something, then those are the ones that are going to empower you and lift you up higher. Totally. So that might be, that might be a good way for people. I've not experienced this situation personally, but that is something that I imagine would work really well, because I know in other situations when I have asked for my friend's support, it's really, really helpful when you do have, like you just said, you have Libby. It's when you have other people supporting you and helping you on that mission, it can make it or break it, which is
100%. And reaching out to your friends is a good idea, and you'll find out real quick who your friends are and who is actually there for your highest good and highest purpose. If they come back and they say, no, don't be a dick, and they just palm it off, there will be some that go, hey, look, awesome stuff, awesome work. Yeah, I have realized that you're a bit of a dick, but I don't want to be the one to say it. This is something for you. And it'll be confronting. You will encounter people's judgments much more harshly than in any other situation, because alcohol is like, it's a product, it's a substance that we have to defend when we don't consume it. It's so socially accepted that we have to defend our reasons why we're not consuming it. It's like, why aren't you drinking? Oh, because for health reasons. And they're like, why? Alcohol is good. It's that whole sort of angle. So yeah, it's a real interesting dynamic. But reaching out to people, yeah, that is a good idea. Reach out privately. You can put it on your Facebook page if you're that confident and that able to receive whatever is going to come back. But reaching out privately just has a real direct way of speaking to someone.
Yeah, well, it's more personal.
But the other factor of that is that people don't like reaching out to people. People don't like asking for help and asking for support. It's like, I'm struggling right now. All I want is for someone to help me, but I won't go and ask people because I don't want to seem weak. And so there's that whole dynamic to get around. And, that's built around the environment that we have created. We've created an environment which kind of, almost accepts that sort of behavior. So there's a very fine line, but for people that are out there, that are experiencing this sort of, deep turmoil within themselves, that are thinking, how do I get over this? Just break that stigma, break that cycle of not asking for help, of not putting your feelings out there, because it will do you much more harm in the long run by you just bottling it up than if you were just to go out there and possibly receive some negative criticism. That you'll get over. But this, you won't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that also sort of stems into, I know one thing that you really help people is defining what it means to be a man, and potentially what society thinks you should be is like drinking, going out, getting fucked up, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like that's where you're taking the lead, where you are planting the seed in people, like we were talking before, you're planting the seed and really redefining what it means to be a man, because something needs to change for a lot of people. Do you just want to maybe talk a little bit about, I guess, what you think it means to be a man and how you can go about redefining that for people? Because that's a very big task.
I'd love to. I'm glad you asked that. I would love to. This is my bread and butter. Right? Yeah, so let me paint a picture for you. So society at the moment we've kind of built this idea of what it means to be a man based on generations upon generations upon generations of role models that we kind of assume in the Western society. And our society is governed by Western society, which basically states, and for decades before today, it was the man had to go out and earn the money, the woman had to stay home. And there were actual news articles and clippings of what a woman should do at home to prepare for her man to come home. Stupid little things like make sure that you look good so that your husband doesn't have to look at something ugly, or make sure the kids are quiet so that your man can come home and relax, or make sure that he has a hot dinner, like stupid stereotypical gender roles, shit like that. But that's what's been programmed into our brains. But what this has done, it's separated us so far from the core essence of who we are as people. An example of this is for men. We've built the stigma that, we go to work, we work a hard day, anything that happens outside of work, and our family lives or whatever, we don't talk about. Everything is kept in the family. And that family is tiny. It's, if you're going for a nuclear family, it's, husband, wife, 2.5 kids, picket fence and a dog. That's a small group of people to be your supporting foundation. But that's what Western society was for so long. And so the man would go to work, he'd do a hard day's labor, he'd go to the pub, have a few drinks, come home, and then he would basically run the show. And the wife would be somewhat submissive and somewhat, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for, supplementary to the man's needs, which shouldn't be the case. What this has done is it's allowed men to really separate from what it means to actually be an empowered male in a society. We've replaced talking with one another. We've replaced communication with grunts at the bar over a pint or a jug or something. We talk about superficial shit, like all of the distractions in the world, like fucking sport. Who the Swans beat this week? Who did the Melbourne Storm play? Who did the LA Lakers? Do you see LeBron James? Like that's the sort of shit that guys talk about. But it's so shallow. It's so it's so superficial. And so when things come up in our lives, like let's say our wife isn't happy at home, she doesn't connect with the husband because he doesn't talk, so she goes and has an affair. I'm not pointing blame. This is just an example of a scenario. She goes and has an affair. Who does the guy talk to in that supporting moment? He can't find anyone because all he knows how to talk about is LA Lakers, Sydney Swans, and Melbourne Storm. Like that's all that he can really communicate. And so this builds this whole alone and lonely feeling that a man has, that they can't really go out and communicate what's truly in their hearts and what's truly in their minds. And this happens everywhere. It happens still to this day. In a lot of the corporate world, and a lot of the rugby world, which I was a part of, and a lot of the sporting world, which I was a part of. And it was just, it's poisonous. Like it is a poisonous culture, because it gets into your being, and it just seeps into every single part of you. And, you know, from what I understand, women are fairly similar, but I think women have a lot of natural empathy that they have going on and can connect with their feelings. So it's not as profound. Yeah. But for men, we're just so disconnected. And especially in New Zealand Māori men are the most likely to commit suicide, because, you know, one reason is, you know, we just don't know how to talk. We've come from a society of where the men would talk, which was the ancient Māori society, and into a Western society where we just don't. And we just supplement it with alcohol and drugs and all sorts of shit. So that's the playing field. That's what we're living in right now. That's the situation. So now, and we're starting to see it a lot more in terms of men stepping up, becoming the empowered versions of who they want to be, so that they can become the leaders that they didn't have in their lives. And it's almost, we're in a part now where we're starting to break the cycle of what it means to be a man, of what it means to be a man. And I say that with speech bubbles. And so right now, we stand on the precipice of men actually engaging with their heart space, starting off by going to yoga, learning how to meditate, learning how to go within, learning how to do breath work, learning how to hold cacao ceremony, to the point where last month I went to Peru and did ayahuasca, and that was an incredible experience. So there's a whole lot of things out there now which men are slowly starting to get towards. But the biggest thing that men can do for one another is, and people in general, is to create the environment, is to create an open and honest and vulnerable environment, so that other people can be a part of it and see that other people are vulnerable and go, fuck, you know what? This guy's sharing the same problem that I've got. Okay, I want to share my problem too and get some advice. You know, I've actually just set up on one of my Facebook pages a closed men's circle online on Facebook. And all it is a live each week where I just jump on and answer questions. But it's not just me answering the questions, it's other men also answering the questions that are coming up. And so it's just a space that men can be and can talk and can communicate and can listen and can understand without judgment, without fear of judgment from anyone. And there's another thing just based on that I've noticed, is that when men are first starting out to be vulnerable, they don't want the influence of a female energy in the room. They don't want the influence of, you know, their wife, their girlfriend, because there is still within themselves this feeling that they need to be strong, that they can't be vulnerable in front of those people. And that will come with time. You know, it's a timing game. You know, you start little and then you end up big. And so by creating that environment for men to really be open and vulnerable and understanding, that's the start. That's where we need to start. Create that environment. And then slowly men will come in. Men will come in and then we'll start to talk and open up. But for me, you know, I've witnessed a lot of my friends, you know, change their ways of life, their way of living. And it's just been a really empowering thing to see, you know, see guys actually communicate with their feelings and not be so logical and not talk so much shit.
How do you get people out of their own heads? Because like I know a couple of guys specifically who people tend to just really open up to me and tell me a lot of things. I think I hold a very safe space for people to do that. And I know a few guys from back home that have reached out to me and said they're going through a really tough time. And I have suggested for them to do things such as meditate and yoga and things like that. And even just the meditation, like I said to one of my friends, if you just sat with your own thoughts just for 2 minutes every morning before you went to work, I think that would really help, because he's feeling very conflicted about the current life situation he's got himself into. And he was like, no, I'm not gay, I'm not going to meditate. And I'm like, meditating doesn't mean you're like, what do you even mean by that? Like, how would you, if there's somebody listening to this, if there's a guy listening to this and they're not so open to potentially sharing their feelings or doing things such as meditation, they're not very open to this world because they've never been exposed to it, and they don't really know that, like, it's not something that they've learned that they need to do. What are some first steps that, even just to like help them to see that this is beneficial? Like, how do you help people to see that?
Yeah, so for me, what I've learned and what I've understood and what I know is that actually the first thing I'll touch on is the reason why people come to you is because your energy is the reason why people talk to you, why people are so open with you specifically, because you have such a beautiful energy about you. And if you continue to have that beautiful energy about you, then people will continue to keep opening up. That's what really attracts people. It's not, the look of your face or, your curly hair, for example. It's the energy that you possess inside, and people will always open up to you because of that. But that's the start. People will come to you and they'll open up. So then how do you transition that to the next stage? So the next stage is, for men, what I've realized is that they appreciate logic. They appreciate what it's actually going to mean for them. You mentioned that your friend said, well, fuck, only gays meditate. It's like, well, no, like, actually have a look at all of these people right here. Every single one of these successful business people, they all meditate. Steve Jobs meditated. Elon Musk meditates. Joe Rogan meditates. There's a whole bunch of sports people that meditate, that get themselves into a greater state of being. A lot of sport. The Chicago Bulls, 95, 96, Phil Jackson, who was the coach, he implemented Zen Buddhism so that the players would be in a space, in a state of mind. Wow. This is in 95, 90, in fact, this is earlier. I think it's like 90, 91, 92. He implemented Zen Buddhism so that his players could be a lot more grounded in their approach and, be a lot more aware of scenes and scenarios around them. There are a range of sports teams, the Seattle Seahawks, the All Blacks, all rugby and rugby league teams, they incorporate, if you watch them, this is for the guys out there, if you watch them, a lot of the successful rugby teams, whenever there's a try scored or half time or any sort of break, they'll get together and they'll take 3 deep breaths. They'll go, and they'll just do that 3 times. But what that moment is, that's a meditation moment. That is mind. That is recentering yourself and calming your mind and emotions so that you can tackle the next thing. And so for men, they need to see that benefit. They need to see that there are a lot of other people out there that don't drink, that meditate, that don't eat meat, all those sorts of things. And then they'll go, oh, actually, all right, I'll give it a try. And then they'll give it a try. And then they'll continue on the path. And then once they're in this stream, this flow, you just need to encourage them. You just need to be non-judgmental in your approach, non-forceful with what you're recommending. In fact, not even recommending anything. Just allow them to talk, Allow men to open up and to speak and be like, fuck, I found this, this was really cool. You're like, cool, man, that's awesome to hear. How did you find it? Yeah, it was blah, 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 blah. Awesome, man. So what's next? Blah, blah, and it just sparks that conversation and flows it into that direction. So it's really, I think men are a lot more difficult to guide in that sense than women.
Yes.
Men are a lot more about logic and women are a lot more about feeling and intuition. And you can tell a woman, you should do this sort of meditation. And they'll go, yeah, I will. That'll be cool. I'm going to do that. Whereas, guys will be like, tell them you should do this sort of meditation. They'll be like, why? What's the purpose? Why should I do that?
Yeah.
But then that's where it comes into, if you're a woman, engaging with your left side brain, with your logic and going, okay, well, this reason, all backed by science. Maybe you should. Things like that.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think that would, knowing him, I think, knowing most guys, actually, that would so work for them if you said like, well, this person did it and this person did it and look how successful they are. Because guys are super logical and I'm so like, if something feels good energetically to me, I have a really big problem. I'm a yes person. Like I get so excited and like if something feels good, I'm just like, yes, let's do it. And then like my calendar is so booked up with all these things and I'm like, why do I say yes to all these things? But like, I totally agree that guys are more logical and like they need reasons behind things and like not so much, not based on so much feelings, which is potentially why they struggle to open up.
Exactly.
Because that's actually how their brain works. I know you love to talk about sort of, you really help men to step into their power. And I always love to sort of, the last bit of the podcast, I love to get some sort of tactical advice from my guests. And I think this is such a amazing topic. I'm really glad that you came on to speak about this sort of stuff because it's not something that's spoken about enough, and we really need to start increasing the awareness of this in the Western world. I'm sure in the whole world as well, but I'm not so familiar with anything besides like Australia and Bali. Australia, definitely we need to start talking about this more. So
the whole world, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any tactical advice or any steps that people could maybe, men could potentially take to start feeling like they are stepping more in towards their power and sort of like redefining what it means to be a man? Like, is there any sort of processes or steps that people can follow, or do you have any tactical advice in that regard?
Yeah, so one piece of advice that I would give is to step out of your own way. If I was giving this advice to a man, let's say you're a man, you're clearly not, but if I was giving this advice to a man and they said, you know, what would you say to me? I said, look, get out of your own way. 100% get out of your own way. You may think that you know it all, but I've got news for you, friend. You don't. The greatest true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing at all. And the more that you believe in that, the more that you will learn. And what that'll do is that'll start the process of you asking questions. And when you start asking questions, you're seeking knowledge. But no one has it down. No one has a secret formula. No one is 100%, you know, the person that they wish they were. Everyone is always trying to be someone else, trying to be someone, a further version of themselves, whether it's someone else, or try to emulate different, you know, personality traits from other people. And that's okay. You are exactly the same as every single person out there. But what these people have that, you know, are succeeding is that they're willing to learn, and they're willing to develop, and they're willing to realize that they don't know it all. And it's okay to get out of your own way and to go, shit, you know what? I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to do something out of my comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone. Do something different. Go to yoga that one time. Go learn how to meditate. Go put on a YouTube video of Zen Buddhism instead of watching highlights of the LA Lakers versus the Boston Celtics. Like, do stuff like that. Do something different every week. Do one thing differently every single week. Then bump that up to every single day. And then just constantly keep learning, constantly keep evolving, constantly keep being and walking towards that version of yourself that you want to be. Because here's the other thing that everyone knows, but no one really knows, is that the person that everyone wants to be is themselves. They only want to be themselves. They only want to be a future version of themselves who has it all set out. They don't want to be Taylor Swift. They don't want to be Kanye West. They don't want to be Barack Obama. You know, you want to be Taylor Perrott, Taylor Pierre. You want to be Taylor, you know, but a fully embodied and goddess-like version of yourself. I want to be Dane. I want to be this version of Dane who is, you know, a warrior, a king, who is the person that I've seen. Every single other person out there wants to be there. And until you realize that, you'll still be floundering around trying to be other people. But get out of your own way first. That's the first piece of advice.
Amazing. I absolutely love it. So Dane, if people want to find out more about what you do, or like the Facebook group that you were talking about, can you share with the audience where they can find more of you online? Yeah,
for sure. So add me as a friend. I like friends and I like adding people. But if you want to add me as a friend, I love these sorts of conversations. My name is Dane Robertson. I'm one of Taylor's friends on her Facebook, so you can Google stalk me that way. My business page is Dane Te Wharaupō. You can check me out on that. That's also my Instagram handle, Dane Te Wharaupō. I'll send Taylor all these details because it's pretty hard to spell. But the other thing as well is the Male Empowerment Network is the closed Facebook group. The Male Empowerment Network. And that's the space where men can come and just talk and be a part of the shared lives and be a part of it all. So come be a part of that. Would love to see you in there. Would love to communicate more and talk with more like-minded people and get to know people more.
Amazing. Okay, Dane, and if there was one last thing that you could say to the audience today, what would it be?
One thing I would say to the audience is to never give up. Never give up on whatever it is. If you sit back, break that setback down, jump that hurdle and keep going. Keep going. Just never give up. Whatever it is, if you feel like you are floundering, if you feel like you're stagnant, if you feel like you've lost motivation, just never give up, because your next level is on the end of whatever it is that you are trying to give up. So just never give up.
I love it. Okay, so if you found that episode valuable, if you really resonated with what we were talking about and the discussion that we were having, please hit the subscribe button and the bell, because I have such amazing content that I'm going to bring you every single week, and I promise you it's all going to be just as valuable as today's episode. And if you feel like you need some support or you have questions about anything that we talked about on today's episode, feel free to email me at this email right here, coachtaylorvictoria@gmail.com, and I'll be able to help you out with any questions that you have. And until the next episode, I'll see you next time. Bye!